Thank you. I'm going to discuss the issue of jobs, and especially in the contemporary environment. I feel a little intimidated here by the massive, broad global appeal, but I think that sometimes you have to focus on the short run. So this is a very short run talk, but it will feed into, I think, dovetail exactly the long-term mission of what we're talking about. Namely, I want to talk about the fact that the U.S. economy, as we all know, slid into recession in mid-2008. The unemployment rate is held at around 6%, a high 6% to over 9% consistently ever since that time, since mid-2008. The unemployment rate currently at 9.1%. This is the most protracted period of unemployment we've had since the 1930s. Yet and with the Obama administration has already projected that the unemployment rate for the United States is not expected to fall below 8.5% until sometimes in the year 2014. That's 2 years after the next election. And the prospects of it falling much below 9% next year and a half is very small. The depth of the economic recession has already driven fiscal policy and to extremes that we have never before experienced. We're now running a $1.5 to $2 trillion or more deficits a year, which cannot be sustained. We have a money supply, our monetary policy, which has now pushed on interest rates almost to zero. Low rates that have never been experienced before, low rates such as that, and for such a protracted period, and still nothing seems to be responding in terms of reducing the unemployment rate. Throughout all this, this troublesome period, the nation's immigration policies, which have been under severe criticism for 40 years for being at odds with the nation's labor market as it already existed, have remained untouched by policymakers. Annual immigration levels are at historic levels, and without any seeming notice of the downturn in the economic economy. Worse yet, when you look at the last couple of years of what's been proposed for immigration reform, it's shocking what our policymakers and our intellectual leaders seem to be speaking about. Almost everything that's proposed would invariably make the situation worse. Examples of such situations are such counterintuitive arguments are massive amnesties for all illegal immigrants in the country, expansion of non-immigrant temporary visas for skilled foreign workers, for unskilled foreign workers, for agricultural workers, policies to reduce the spending on immigration enforcement as a way of cutting government spending, a proposal to cease making worksite inspections to locate illegal immigrants, proposal to stop invoking civil and criminal penalties against employers who hire illegal immigrants. Proposals to give permanent resident aliens cards to all foreign students who graduate from U.S. colleges in mathematics or sciences so that they can seek jobs in the United States. Arrange summer employment jobs for U.S. foreigners in the United States for foreign students in order that they might be able to afford to study in American colleges and universities during the coming academic years. And proposals to limit deportations of apprehended illegal immigrants to only criminal aliens. All of these things would make the situation worse in the United States. It should be obvious that that proposals to increase the supply of labor during a period of insufficient labor demand can only promote, certainly don't deal with the problem of unemployment. In other words, these are all proposals to increase the supply of labor during a period of massive and protracted unemployment. In comparison with the last period, which is normally what we do with the times of the fiscal and monetary policy, the last time we had such an exercise of these policies and such extreme measures was, of course, the 1930s. And what's the major difference between the 1930s and the current period seems to be totally neglected. During the 1930s, that decade, only 528,000 legal immigrants entered the United States that entire decade. That's about 50,000 a year people, probably 30,000 workers in that during that entire decade. Even the low annual ceiling that was permissible during that period, which was only 154,000 legal immigrants a year, was often not met. In addition, many states and local municipalities during the Depression decade took active steps to actually pressure illegal immigrants to leave the countries. In fact, it's believed in many years of the 1930s, immigration with an E actually exceeded immigration with an I. And the major labor market difference between then and now basically is immigration policy. during that period of extreme economic problems during the 1930s, immigration was a non-issue. It was basically neutral over that entire issue. In comparison, here in this first decade of the 21st century, 13.1 million immigrants, legal and illegal, entered the United States between the year 2000 and 2009, even though the number of people employed during that period declined by 1 million. Over the 2-year period, in the year 2008 to 2009, when the recession formally hit, 2.4 million immigrants entered the United country, while over 8 million jobs were lost in that period. Immigration policy seems to have been completely left out of anybody's discussion about what to do about the problem of unemployment during this period. I want to briefly mention what was wrong with their immigration policy before the recession started, then try to link it back. For over 40 years, policymakers had recognized that the nation's immigration system was not congruent with the evolving labor market trends of the economy. That successive Congresses and administrations were reluctant for 40 years to deal with the issue of immigration policy reform, as they still are. The diversion stems from basically what began with the Immigration Act of 1965. It had completely unexpected consequences. There was absolutely no intention in 1965 to raise the level of immigration. And it's surprising, one of the most important things happening in the United States since 1965 has been this massive expansion of immigration, for which neither political party takes any credit. Today they take credit for everything, but neither one takes credit for what happened because it wasn't supposed to happen. It wasn't anticipated and it wasn't expected. Instead, the goal of 1965 was to end the overt discrimination in our immigration laws that was in effect in 1965, the national origin system, to get rid of it. That was the purpose. It was not to expand mass immigration. No one at the time expressed any interest in expanding immigration again or returning to the periods of mass immigration the country experienced at the beginning of the 19th century, or the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century. In the decade following 1965, the congressional hearings quickly revealed that there were shortcomings in the passage of the Immigration Act of 1965. It was having unexpected consequences. These were led by such progressives as Walter Mondale and Peter Odino, raising questions about the fact that our immigration policy was having unexpected consequences. Responding to that public discontent was President Jimmy Carter, as you recall, in 1977, who started the whole issue of immigration reform just, say, a decade after the Immigration Act of 1965 had passed. It was designed to deal with the most egregious problem of our immigration system, namely its mass abuse by illegal immigration. It was Jimmy Carter who recommended the idea that we should have criminal penalties for employers who hire illegal immigrants, as well as an amnesty for illegal immigrants who were in the country at the time, because our immigration policy at the time was ambiguous in 1965. And so we're trying to end that ambiguity by passing employer sanctions, making it clearly illegal for employers to hire illegal immigrants into the labor force. Congress, of course, responded by not acting on Carter's original proposals, but saying all immigration ought to be studied, not just the illegal immigration. The result was the passage of this creation of the Select Commission on Immigration Policy and Immigration Refugee Policy, chaired by the Reverend Theodore Hesburgh, president of Notre Dame University, and also formerly the chairman of the United States Civil Rights Commission, back when it really meant something to be the Civil Rights Commission. Again, he was an outstanding liberal and a progressive. It was chairman of that commission, that 16-member commission, whose major conclusion was, when it issued its report in 1981, that immigration was, quote, out of control, and a comprehensive set of proposals were put forth to try to address it. That's the sad story I won't go through about what happened to those proposals of comprehensive immigration reform when it was first proposed, but it was too difficult for Congress to handle. As a result, they dealt with a piecemeal proposal of passing just the Illegal Immigration Reform and Control Act, deal with just the illegal immigration. And that did introduce employer sanctions and an amnesty. And supposedly the problem of illegal immigration was addressed. Unfortunately, as we found quickly afterwards, these deterrent efforts would be essentially scuttled by lack of funding, for federal funding for all the enforcement provisions, and by the widespread use of counterfeit documents, and by a continuing surge of illegal immigrants. Congress, unfortunately, believed that the back door had been closed and went about to open the front door to illegal immigration. That was done with the Immigration Act of 1990, but they fortunately also created another commission chaired by Barbara Jordan, the room in which we actually sit here and meet today. Certainly a moderate liberal. I knew her when I was teaching at the University of Texas back in those times. A fairly outstanding American. Again, another on the liberal progressive side, in which immigration was seen as a liberal progressive issue. Without going through all the results of the Jordan Commission report, the major conclusion of that report was, quote, "We must give due consideration to shifting economic realities," that, unquote, and immigration has got to understand in immigration that economic realities are changing, and by adopting, quote, "a significant redefinition of priorities in our immigration policy." Congress, of course, and sorry to say, President Clinton essentially abandoned all the recommendations of the Jordan Commission, which were a very comprehensive report. Didn't enact virtually any of them. Even the small provisions dealing with illegal immigration were watered down in what legislation did pass in 1995. So everything that was been found wrong with our immigration system when the economic downturn began, we're still there when the downturn began. We had 40 years of trying to reform our immigration laws, and no one listened to either one of these commissions that put forth indicating what the problems were. So I briefly want to just look at what these major recommendations of these liberal commissions basically were. First of all, the size and the annual flow of immigration is too high. It's too high. It was too high when the recession began. By definition, it's too high during a period of massive recession that has set forth since that time. It was the message of both of these reports. Namely, the level of immigration itself has major consequences on the supply of labor. It affects the wages and job opportunities of individuals, workers, as well as income and employment patterns for the overall economy. It's a principle of academic studies of labor markets, and that economic reality is fundamental to our own American labor movement.